everybody. Welcome to Revival Town Podcast. I'm Chuck Tate. That's Andy King.
How you doing, mate?
I'm great, but we're going right into, we have some guests in the studio.
Yeah, we do.
So, Jamie Markley, Scott Robbins from the Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins Show, nationally syndicated radio show. It's an honor to have you guys in here. You guys are the pros.
We would have brought Van Camp, but he's represented by somebody else. See, yeah. It's a whole different fee structure he has set up. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We've known you guys for a long time, and obviously we share your story, Scott, in the first chapter of my new book, 9 Words from Jesus, which also highlights Jamie going to really just bat for you, praying, rallying up people to pray for you. And it's really cool that you're both sitting here knowing what we know and everything that you went through. It's just so cool. So we're going to get to that. But first, just tell us, how's the show going? You guys have nationally syndicated talk radio show. And in fact, several markets. You're in Rush Limbaugh's spot, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah, man. It's wild to me that it's where it's at. When he had his heart attacks, and I know we'll get to that, in 2015, we were just trying to hang on until he got back, and it ended up syndicating. And I don't think we ever set out to do that. It was, a friend of ours that we had worked with said, you don't have to move to a bigger city. You could stay where you are and actually syndicate it, which was way beyond, I think, what we were thinking back in 2013 or 14.
Well, it's interesting because he was a radio consultant.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I told Jamie, I said, usually I learn how to flinch with radio consultants when they come in because they have to find something wrong with you or it doesn't justify their position, right?
Yeah.
So they can't be. But when we had breakfast with the guy the first time, he's like, I think you guys could do bigger than this if you wanted to do it. I mean, you're doing great, but here's the thing. And so I was like, when we were driving back, I'm like, are you kidding me? What just happened?
Well, you were nervous going into that breakfast.
Of course I was, yeah.
Well, I said, I'm going to ask him, how do you think we could get to be good enough to get to a top 25 market? Mm-hmm. And you were afraid that if we asked him the question, that we'd end up getting fired.
Right. Well, I was always,
because we were looking to move or something.
Every other day I thought we were going to get fired.
But the fact that it's syndicated now, it's just beyond what we ever thought. When we first started this thing, because the show was originally Robbins and Markley, which was my preference is not to lead a show or quarterback a show. It's just to chime in when you want to or when necessary.
Yeah.
Go out and have a heart attack and now you're third billed.
Well, take us back even before the heart attack. You guys have been friends for a long time. You've done radio for a long time.
Yeah. We met backstage at a Van Halen show in 92, but we knew of each other through mutual friends, and we became fast friends and wanted to work together. And we worked together at the same radio station a couple of times, but never on the same show together.
Right. It was funny because when I met him, I'd been kind of a fan of his stuff that he did on the air because I was doing mornings, he was doing afternoons, and I could hear him when I got done. And I think vice versa. I think we were both kind of fans of each other's work. So right away, there wasn't that weird feeling you get with some guys in radio who are a little standoffish and don't really want to talk to you because they're afraid you're going to take their job or something. So right away, we struck it up.
That's why I don't have Andy preach at Rock Church anymore.
Oh, there you go. Truth comes out, guys.
Now we know. Yeah. Now we know.
You want that guy to be good, but not too good.
Right, exactly. Yeah. To steal your job.
I'm going to do the podcast on my own.
Welcome to the Andy Show. That's where we met and we became fast friends. And he moved to Rockford at some point, and I remember spending a weekend that seemed like a lost weekend at the time, but he was both in Rockford. He showed us a good time on the town that night.
Yeah, we stayed friends through that. And then when I got back to Peoria, we ended up working together. I talked you out of a job into another job.
Yeah.
And then I left that. Then you went somewhere else. And then we ended up back at the same station. Mm-hmm. And then we were trying to work together, and it wasn't working out. And I was burned out and went into sales for about, 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then there was an opportunity for us to work together. And so finally, that was it. And it didn't take long. The chemistry was there.
Yeah. And when was it, Jamie? I was trying to think the time frame. There was a time when you had an afternoon show with Phil Luciano.
Yeah.
And, you were gracious enough to invite me every week to talk about not just the Dream Center, but what was going on in the city and the vibe and different things that were going on. When was that part of this story?
That would have been like 2005 to 2009 or 10.
Okay.
And then there was another consultant that worked with the radio group that said that me and Phil didn't really fit on that station. We should do mornings on a rock station. He happened to be the consultant for the rock station.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm just telling the truth. It's not saying anything bad.
Right,
At the time, he told Luch and I, all you got to do basically is do the show you're doing now, but do it in the morning over here. But once we got there, they really tried to change the show up a lot. You got to play music. You really don't want to interview the mayor anymore. You don't want to do those things.
Yeah.
You want to be more of a rock morning show. And it ended up just not working out.
Yeah.
And that's when, it was after that I ended up getting into sales, because he and I had talked about pairing together, but they wanted to get me back into a managerial role that I think you would say that job itself is not a fun one.
Yeah, one of the worst jobs ever.
And it was like, I don't want to do that again.
It's like, is driving a bus out of the equation now? Because I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
But once the door sort of opened without that part of it, then we were off and running after that.
Yeah, it was great because he came to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "That'd be great." You know, I was doing afternoons. I replaced he and Luch when those guys went over to the rock station. And then when I kept seeing him come back in a suit and tie on, carrying a briefcase, I'm like, "Who is this guy?" But we started talking. We started the conversation, and we went to our boss at the time, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think it'd be great." And he thought it'd be great, and there we go. The whole thing took off after that.
And you guys,
In fact, when you're doing sales, I mean, go ahead.
so you guys were based in Peoria, but there was this connection with Portland, right?
Alpha Media owned the Peoria group, the Peoria radio group. And so when they had a guy that was on vacation or something in the time slot that we're on now, and they asked us to fill in for that week, because I think we did it was like 7.5 hours on air that entire week.
Yeah, because we still did the full show in Peoria and the Portland show.
Yeah.
It was 7.5 hours every day.
Yeah.
Because there's a time difference as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Man.
And then they wanted us to do it full time there. The people in Portland
But
really
staying
liked the show.
in Peoria.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, they tried to get us to move to Portland several times.
Neither one of us were in a position to do that at the time, and didn't think it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Man, well, I'm so glad you got back behind the mic, because I remember you came and saw me when you were doing the sales thing. I was like, man, I'm willing to do whatever, but I'm like, man, you're born to do radio, like both you guys. And
I remember meeting with you on that.
yeah, that was cool.
And I remember what I was doing at the time, long story short, I had this idea. I talked to all these pastors, and I thought, if everyone pooled their money together, you could do a great advertising campaign about what your church is about. Because there were so many people I knew at the time that were looking for a church but weren't quite sure, and that was the whole idea. So I got to meet some really cool people through that.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
cool.
And then you
20
met
pastors.
Chuck as well.
Yeah, part of the deal.
I already knew Chuck. I knew Chuck through a mutual friend before that.
So you land this gig where you're in Peoria, Portland is starting to go crazy. What was the moment when you're like, oh, this is going national now? What was that moment where it wasn't just a Peoria thing or a Portland thing anymore?
Well, it was after Scott's heart attacks. And so David Van Camp was producing our show. He came in as a news guy, then became news director, and then became program director and was producing our show. This was all, within a year?
Right, yeah.
And then when he had his heart attacks, we were looking for different people that I could just team with until he got back.
That didn't happen. Well, let's
Well,
go
I meant-
back then. Let's
Yeah, go ahead.
Back,
You can
go back to the
that.
heart attack then.
Yeah.
Because obviously it derailed everything.
Well, we had been out to Portland, and we just got back with the deal signed. And I remember telling him on the way home, I said, I can't believe we did this, but we did this. This is wild. I mean, this is going to happen to a couple of, you called us jamokes from the Midwest, right?
I'll never forget it.
And that was the Markley and Robbins show.
Yeah.
Robbins and Markley.
Robbins
yeah.
Markley show.
Yeah, they
Yes.
took us out to Portland and
Yeah.
showed us around. We did the show from there for a few days, and then they offered us the job, the full-time job with Portland, and we weren't going to keep Peoria too, so we were going to try to figure it out. We did. But again, we were 2 weeks after that, boom, I had a heart attack. I mean, I just signed this deal, and we were just on top of our game at that point, and then was just gone. Everything was gone. Everything.
Man.
Yeah, and the heart attack literally took you out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
for a long time.
yeah.
Well, first we didn't think he was going to live through.
Yeah. So
It was the second heart attack was the one that was.
Right. Why don't you talk us through that, Jamie?
Well,
because he may not remember it.
I don't remember much of anything. No,
honestly, this happens all the time, and because it's not just this. I have a memory for dates and things that he'll make fun of all the time.
he does. He's like.
I was
weird
impressed
like
with all the
that. Yeah.
dates you were throwing out earlier. Like,
He can
man,
tell you.
Wow.
He can tell you exactly when it was. Yeah.
August 24th, 2015 is what the heart attacks. But it was after the first day. I mean, I went to the hospital, and got the news, and he just kept repeating himself like every minute. Like, where am I? Why am I here? We have a show today. And I'm like, you had a heart attack, Scott. You had a heart attack. Really? I didn't know that. Yeah, you had a heart attack, and it's going to take a while. And at that time, the doctor was saying this is normal, but it is going to take a while for recovery. That was on a Monday morning. Tuesday morning, I get a call at like 3:30 in the morning that, well, you coded, and I should get to the hospital. So, and it took me, I don't know, I'm guessing 20 minutes to get there. And then park, go up, the elevator, and I'm walking back. There's nobody there. I mean, it's in the middle of the night. And they're working on him. And they were trying to get a pulse. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, he's not going to make it. They can't. They're trying to get a pulse. But there was that one dude, man. His name is Jesse, right?
Yeah.
That just, it's like he would not give up. He kept giving instructions, and they had this one doctor on video that was giving instructions. It was like a dozen different people working on him. And then after, I don't know how many minutes, and me thinking, man, I'm going to watch my buddy die right here. And then all of a sudden I heard him say, we got a pulse. We got a pulse. And then they were just trying to get him stabilized. And I just remember then them talking about they're going to have some sort of surgery because there was damage done to the liver from the chest compressions before they could do the open heart surgery. And he wasn't out of the woods, but it was good that he had the pulse and everything else. And then after the surgery, I think the next day, we just knew it was going to take a long time. But we expected him to come out of a coma, as I remember it, within a few days. But it wasn't a few days. It just kept going on and on and on. So I think in the end, you were in that coma, I mean, without talking or anything, for over a month.
Saved a lot of money when I was in the coma.
Well, I remember, in fact, we put this in the book. We actually take your Facebook post and you gave us permission to publish it, so people can see, kind of what you were thinking and read what you wrote, and you rallied people to pray. I remember every day, and you probably do this too, Eddie. Every day going to the page to see what. Give us an update. How's Scott? How's Scotty? How's he doing? Oh my, man, the show was blown up. It was doing so good. Now the setback. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? This is crazy. Is he gonna make it? Like, and giving updates and pray. And not out of the woods yet. Pray. You know what I mean? All that. And then Scott, do you remember anything from the early days of your hospital stay, or not really?
Not much. It's what I was told afterwards, I guess, too. I can remember, I think probably the first memory I have is him coming up. And I had another buddy of mine that had come up a lot. And my other buddy, I can clearly remember this. It's weird that I remember it. But the Royals were in the World Series. And he comes, and of course, no cable TV in the hospital. You get nothing, right?
And you're representing the Royals today.
I am, yeah. But he brought his laptop with him and goes, I think we can get it on my laptop. Yeah. And I can barely remember it. I was in and out. I was foggy. But then he would come up a lot too. I remember Jamie coming up a lot, and I would always probably ask the same questions. I was under the impression at one point in time, because I really wanted to get back on the show, because I knew, man, I got to get back on the show, That's all I wanted to do. And I would tell him that all the time. And he'd like, well, when you're healthy, when you're good. And he would tell me this stuff. And I talked to a nurse one time about, can I leave the hospital, go do the show, and come back? Like it was a hotel, And she's like, well, no, you can't do that. And from my room, I could see our building. Which made it even worse sometimes because I'd look out and I'd see it and I think, I'm so far away. But you don't even know. And how bad you were, I had no clue. And still I started talking to him and doctors and other things, and it was bad. It was very bad. But I can say this guy was the best friend I ever had. I mean, he was there every day. During my recovery, he was at my house practically every other day. It was just, he really, I can't say enough about it because I don't think I would be here today if it weren't for him.
Yeah.
And he would go to rehab with me. I mean, all kinds of stuff. I mean, he didn't have to do any of this,
Yeah.
But he did it. And, like I said, we got a brotherly type relationship. Yeah. I think you'll say that too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he could pick on me like crazy too.
We fight like brothers.
But we angry with each other from time to time. But, it happens. But I'll never forget what he did for me. And again, rallying all that prayer. And I had so many people that I still see them when I'm out. I say, we prayed for you. We prayed hard for you. And I'm like, well, here I am. Yeah. Guess what works?
Yeah.
Prayer works. That's what works.
And you know what? You have a pretty massive Facebook following, and people they pay attention to what you say. They really do. And I love that you are bold enough to say, no, God did this.
Oh,
you
yeah.
I mean, you had a friend praying for you and give glory to God, because prior to your heart attack, God used this also to change your life. Is that correct?
Oh, buddy. Yeah. Yeah, he did. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. I have no shame in saying that. I was then. I haven't had a drink in 9 years and don't have any reason to drink again or have anything else. So but it was, and I was smoking cigars and I was out late and doing nutty stuff and things I shouldn't have done, and I did. And, there's a shame attached to it where I am right now, but I think all that has been sort of forgiven as time goes on. I've asked for forgiveness. I think I was granted forgiveness. My alcoholism is, I have zero desire to ever go back to that life again because, well, it almost killed me, number one. Yeah. And it would have killed me had I have kept going if this heart attack didn't happen. So really the heart attack turned out it was kind of a blessing in some weird way.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say it was at the lowest lows I've ever had.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you look back and you go, would any of that behavior stopped had you not have had that heart attack? And the answer is no, it wouldn't have.
Right. Well, there's a scripture that says what the enemy intended for evil, God used it for good. Yeah. And we can definitely see that. But before he did use it for good, Jamie, take us back to when you know how bad he wants to do radio. He was called to do radio, created to do radio, and you're fighting for him, rallying people to pray. And how did you handle with the realization that I don't know if he's going to come back? I mean, how hard was that for you?
It was tough. I mean, as I've told him before, you went through all this. So what am I going to do? Whine about how it's hard for me? You know what I mean? Because... Yeah. But I won't lie to you. It was tough because there's all these different facets to it. Here's your friend that you don't know is going to make it. And it's also your radio partner. And you feel like we have this good thing going. Mm-hmm. And then it's also, if he does come back, what is it going to be like? There was just so many different things going on. And for me, praying every day about it, I had to learn to rely on God more. It strengthened my faith into, okay, I have no control over this. All I can do is do the best that I can, and try to keep it together, and then not know what's going to happen. But I had known, from trying to walk with the Lord, for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years before that in so many different situations that I could not see coming, God took care of me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it'll be okay. But, some days it stretches you more than you really want to be stretched. So to me, the hardest thing was once he started being able to talk, and even through his trach, he had his sense of humor. It was back, pretty quickly, which was good to see. But at the same time, we'd be, you mentioned sitting there in the hospital and thinking, could I go over to the studio? I remember the one time we were sitting there, and you're like, how long have we been in your basement? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we're in your basement, right? I'm like, and then I would walk out of there going, he's never going to be able to do this. He doesn't even know where he is. I have no idea how this works after a heart attack and all that stuff.
Where's he hiding the booze? Where is he?
Well, let's pause there a minute, because in the midst of this, right, obviously as a radio station, there are decisions that are needing to be made.
Oof.
Can you just walk with us through that, like those conversations? Because you've got one end, you've got the faith, right? That he's going to be okay. He's going to pull through, believe in. But then you're working obviously with not a Christian radio station that may not last that long as far as wanting to wait.
But it's a business.
It's a business. Can you just unpack that a little bit as not only a friend, but also co-host and obviously representing the radio station?
Yeah. So to me, it was the position is we're trying to, hang on for as long as, until he gets back. Once we got to December, and again, the heart attacks were in August, there was a real question, will it ever happen?
Yeah.
And by that time, David had really come into his own in a number of ways. When we were looking at different people to fill in with me, that was like a last resort. I said, you and I can try to slug this out. I don't know how it's going to go.
Right.
But he really stepped up, and he is a great preparer. He really does his homework. And that part of it made it easier. And I mean, for anybody at the radio group or different people, like, man, he has really stepped up more than we thought. We're like, yeah. And by December, the radio group wanted us to know that even if Scott couldn't make it back, they wanted to continue on at least with us too. And it was funny because David had sent me a text, and I don't know if it was voice to text, whatever it was, it said, they let me know that they don't want to continue on. And I remember looking at it and me thinking, oh, wow, I thought they were happy with the way it was going. Yeah. I guess not.
Yeah.
And then it was like 20 minutes later, he's like, oh my gosh, I texted you wrong. No, they want to keep this going. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, good enough. But then once we got to like January, January, February, his voice was not even close to being back, and he still had memory issues.
Right.
And it would be like within 10 or 15 minutes, he would tell you the same thing. And I remember it was early March, and it was one of the rehab things, talking to a doctor. And the doctor said, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to get back to doing a full-time radio show. And I was like, oh, man. And at the same time, there were hints from different people in management. We don't know. We may have to just go with you guys. And then I think once they made the decision, they just sat me down and told me, we're going to have to change the name of the show. And that was difficult, but it was more difficult thinking about Scott. And then I knew the next day they were going to tell Scott. And I had asked what time, because whatever time, I've got to come in there right after that.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to let him know that I hadn't given up on it.
Yeah. Can we pause there?
You fought for him.
Can we pause there? So, Scott, what was that conversation like?
Not fun.
Yeah.
Not fun. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of these guys that has been doing this since I was 17 years old. So do the math. 47 years. Only thing I've ever wanted to do, only thing I've ever done. And it's not like I got a fallback option, like, I'll just be an electrician now.
Right.
That wasn't going to happen. So
they weren't going to send you out on sales.
No, nothing like that. So I was in a hospital bed in my house, and the boss came and said, hey, we got to let you go. Crushing. Because in my mind, I was ready to go. I was all set and ready to go, in my mind.
Yeah.
But of course, everybody else knew that I wasn't. So, it was awful. It was awful. It was a terrible day for me, because I was like, I got to this point now, I'm fighting like crazy, but I still really couldn't walk.
Yeah.
I was in a wheelchair, and I had the trach. You see where I show you guys on TV. There you go. Where the trach was, but that screws up your voice. They didn't know if that was ever going to come back.
Yeah.
And one day it just did. It just, wow. Well, I mean, seriously, I woke up one day and it was there.
Yeah.
That's it. And,
there was dialysis.
I was on dialysis too for 6 months, 7 months.
That was longer than that. It was over a year.
Yeah, it probably was over a year. So I'm on dialysis too, and anybody who's ever been on dialysis, I think you know that you're in a constant sort of feeling of ill.
Yeah.
There's just nothing natural about any of that. You're taking your blood out and you're purifying it, putting it back into your body. Not good. So I did that 3 days a week. 3 hours.
We're also talking about ways we could schedule it around the show.
Yeah, because I didn't know if I would be on it for the rest of my life because I was told I would be.
Yeah.
And then again, let's do a God moment here because the guy who is running the facility, they take your blood and they test it every single time you're there, essentially to run your numbers. And he comes back and he looks at me and goes, I'm going to send this to your doctor, but I don't think you have to do this anymore.
Wow.
He said, and that doesn't happen. That never happens.
Wow.
Where you're on dialysis and you come off dialysis naturally, and I did. And now my numbers are never going to be perfect. My numbers are always going to be higher than yours and yours, Chuck, and Jamie's and everybody else's. They're going to bounce and fluctuate a little bit from time to time. And I white knuckle it every single time we read those numbers. But it's like my kidney doctor told me, you have to understand, a bomb went off inside your body.
Yeah.
He said, that's what happened to you. He said, this thing just exploded. So I'm looking at these numbers right now and I'm thinking to myself, they're high, but they're not crazy.
Right.
You're not going to be back on dialysis anytime soon. But, so the fallout is I was on dialysis. I have neuropathy in my feet terribly, but that's a side part of dialysis. But outside of that, for the most part, I'm fairly healthy.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, it's crazy. I know it is, but,
Yeah. They didn't even know for a little while if you would even talk again, right?
No,
right.
I couldn't.
And,
I mean, he brought me on the first time after my first appearance back on that show was just as sort of a, hey, how you doing kind of thing. I mean, he can play me the tape now. It's ridiculous. And I thought I sounded great. I was like, oh, this is great. and people were truthful enough to say, dude, you're not there yet, And I wasn't even close to being there. It was real wispy and, that kind of thing, raspy. It was terrible. And again, I mean, I just woke up from bed one day and started talking, and there it was.
Wow.
Go figure, right?
So at what point, Jamie, did you think we might be able to get him back on?
As I remembered, it would have been around fall 2017.
Okay.
So how many?
2 years after.
2 years.
Yeah.
Where, to me, the sense of humor was always there. The voice wasn't there, but that was okay, at least to me. As long as he could just get his, thoughts across, and his memory issues wouldn't be debilitating. Like, he wouldn't repeat himself in a 10-minute span.
Right.
So we had talked about it. I talked to some people in management saying, what if we just start out, let's put him on once a week in this certain slot. And then that went well. And then it was, how about we put him on at the same time every day? Just in this segment.
Now, are you in studio? Or,
yes. Yeah, I was in studio then.
Because David's in a different part of the country, right?
He is now.
He wasn't then.
2019 is when he went to Texas.
Which blows my mind. When you listen to the show, you'd think he's right in the room with you.
Right.
Yeah. But he's in Texas, right?
Yeah, San Antonio.
San Antonio.
Yeah, well, this is the AI version of Chuck. He's not even here.
He's a hologram. Yeah.
So we're doing every day, right? So it's but at the same time, not the whole show, right?
No,
it's one segment that I'm
segment.
doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
and how is that coming across to people that have remembered you from way back? Like, this is amazing. Like, it's a bit different, but it's okay.
Good?
Like, what was the response like?
early on it was he doesn't sound quite like he used to sound, but it's great to have him back. But what had happened was they had syndicated the show. And so to new markets we were on, they didn't know who Scott was. And we sort of had to educate people of who he was.
Yeah.
And you probably remember this, Chuck, talking to different friends, people of faith through this. I would often say, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I think God is really at work in Scott. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but if nothing else, if he never gets all the way back, God grabbed his attention. And I know he didn't want it that way, but I can't help but think in the end, this could be a good thing.
Yeah.
And
There were a lot of people that felt that way.
Yeah.
And even for your journey as well, Jamie, your spiritual journey, I mean, you've probably never prayed so much in all your life and leaned on others as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would have been something that obviously God was teaching you through that time as well.
Yes. And I know you both know mutual friend Bill Allison.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
been on the podcast
Yeah.
before. And,
It- I mean, I can't tell you how many hours spent just talking with him, through everything. He was just like a great big brother through all that. But then once it got to the point, and it's interesting, and you know this, we've talked about it a million times. The whole business that we're in has always meant so much more to him than me. Like, I always felt like I could go do something else. And he's like, I don't want to do anything else. And this is it for me.
That sounded just like him.
He's got that down.
But I knew not, how do I say it? It was important for him to get back on the show, really contribute. And I also knew he wanted his name on the show, and I wanted his name on the show. And David, I will say, was a champ through that, because I would just say, listen, man, I know we've held on to this thing and we've grown it, okay? But in my heart, it's never going to be the same without him.
Yeah.
And
I remember you telling me that. Like,
yeah, and he was great through that. And then it was trying to convince the company, which, means another salary. And also the hesitation of, is this guy really back or not?
yeah.
And I had talked to a few different people how to go about it. And one particular morning, I was just praying about it. And all I got, and it's those times where you think, I think this is the Holy Spirit speaking to me. I don't want to say for real, because I'm not sure. But whenever that happens, I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah.
I'm
See what
usually in the
happens.
Taco Bell drive-thru at that moment. No, go ahead.
Do you really need those tacos, Chuck?
It's conviction. That's what that is.
But it was just write a letter.
Yeah.
Write him a letter. And just from your heart.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a letter to the head of syndication, the president of that company, and then the big boss at Alpha, and just laid it out there. And then I let a couple of friends read it and say, can I tweak that a little bit? And I think for various reasons, because it could come off a little strong. But I'm like, yeah, fine. And so I sent it, and all of a sudden they're like, all right, I think we can do this.
Wow.
And it happened. And I'll never forget it when we agreed, and they did a whole TV piece on it. And then, I freaking cried on TV.
He did.
Yeah.
Not openly,
How
not
did that
openly
make you
cried.
feel with him writing that letter and going to bat for you like that?
Well, I mean, again, the best friend I've ever had in this business is him. I mean, there's no question. And outside the business, too. But I was doing, and one thing, I was doing this awful sports talk show. That kind of got me back on the air. I just wanted to get back on the air somehow.
Right. Yeah.
And it was killing me that I wasn't on that show, because I wanted to be so badly on that show. But
I remember you were on one of my old podcasts back in the day when that was going on.
the sports talk show?
Yes.
Yeah, that lasted about 10 minutes. And I mean, the whole thing was a disaster, right? But I mean, I tried to keep the balls in the air as much as possible with that show. But my whole thing was getting back on this show. And I don't know. I got to the point where I was kind of defeated at some point, like, this just isn't going to happen, And I knew that he was pushing. I knew that David had thrown in his 2 cents too. And I thought, well, we'll see if these guys, I don't know if they can pull it off yet or not, because it's still a relatively new show. I mean, for them to go ahead and invest in another guy. And we figured it out through some trickery with bookkeeping and whatnot, eliminating a couple of salaries and whatever. And I got the job. And the guy called me back and threw me an offer, and I'm like, yes. I don't even know what it was.
It's terrible negotiating.
I am bad at it.
Terrible.
But
I can tell you stories.
I didn't really feel like I had a position to go, well, it's really not enough for me. It's like, whatever. I'll
You were
take
just
it.
glad to be alive.
Yeah,
I was grateful, right? Just
to
like,
be a
wow.
part of this. Yeah. And I'm like, I can, this is a part of this.
Yeah.
And then the show just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And much to our surprise, I mean, and here we are today. And I feel extremely blessed that this has happened to me. And I can talk a lot about friendship. I can talk a lot about loyalty. And Jamie was my friend. Jamie was loyal to me throughout this whole thing. And it was tough, man, because like I said, I had no idea. And my heart was breaking in two because I just thought there's no way I'm ever going to get back. Man. And this is the way it is.
Well, and I wouldn't tell him either that I had written a letter or anything because that was only going to to get his hopes up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I didn't want that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted him to, don't believe me, I wanted him to do it.
Right.
But at the same time, had he have told me, I don't think, because there was a long lag time there after that too.
Yeah.
So, I was so antsy for something to happen.
Man.
You know, and I took a job doing a morning show in Bloomington from my house. In the meantime, I just do something to get back on the radio again, you know?
Well, and credit to Bob Prophet on this.
Yeah.
Because we had a conversation and me talking about how you were fatigued because you were doing that show and then our show.
Yeah, I was doing
both. And by
both.
the end of our show, you were tired.
Yeah.
And me saying to him, man, if he could get a raise, he could get off this other show and just put all of his focus here. He's like, how much are we talking about? I shot him a number. He's like, yeah, let's do that. Okay.
Yeah. And then this guy, Bob Prophet, calls me and goes, hey, how about we just do this? How much are you making? I knew he'd already told him, or I thought he did. So I said, well, and it wasn't much. It was like $22,000 or something to do this thing. And he goes, well, what if we just do 23 and call it a day on top of what you're making now? Gee, okay. You know, one of the greatest days of my life.
And then you didn't have to get up early.
No. And this kind of nickel dime thing I was doing at the time. Yeah. So it was
wow,
really good. Really
well, you know,
good.
and I think we've talked about this before, and in the end, maybe we haven't talked about this. I think we have. With David, with the two of us, summed up something that we never had as partners, in my opinion, because we have great chemistry. I don't think there's any denying that. But as far as like a news background and organizing information and can recall it, like I think the show is so much better with the three of us.
Yeah.
In the end, you know, I didn't wish it on anybody, but it's kind of crazy that we're sitting here now with the team we have. I think we're really blessed to have it.
Well, and I think you can see that from how the country has taken you guys with all the different markets that are opening up. Tell us a bit about the show, because obviously we have a lot of people listening and watching the podcast that aren't in America, you know, overseas. Or they're not around this area, right? Can you just tell us a bit about what's unique about your show, what you talk about, and also the dynamic? You've talked about the three dynamics of the three of you. Can you just open that up a little bit so that people can, oh man, that's the type of stuff they do?
And how many years before we hit that, how many years from it was Robbins and Markley, and then now it's nationally syndicated and it's Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. How many years? What kind of gap was there before? How long did that take?
Beginning of 2013, Robbins and Markley, and it was that until I think April 2016. So yeah, like 9 months or so after the heart attacks, and then it was Markley and Van Camp until June 2019.
Wow.
And then it was Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins after spring 2019.
Wow. Yeah, so open it up about the show. Tell us a little bit about it.
All yours.
You know, I asked to explain the show. First of all, it's a conservative bent politically, as anybody who knows, listens, and understands that. But what we never wanted to do was pound on our desk and breathe fire every day.
Sure.
You know, this is the way it's got to be, you know, that kind of thing. And,
was it fair to say this? When it started, Robbins and Markley, it was not...
It was more of a lifestyle show.
Well, and I was more, I would say, down the middle politically.
Yeah. I got him over to the other side. And again, we talked about Rush Limbaugh earlier. And you can't do Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh did Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
If you try to do Rush Limbaugh, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Or you're going to play second banana all the time.
And they're always going to say, oh, they're
what
trying to
he
be
is.
like.
So there were, I mean, some people will say, I'm glad you guys replaced Rush. I used to listen to Rush all the time. I listen to you guys. And that's fine. That's a compliment. But all that being said, it's a show. We leave them laughing.
Yeah.
Almost at the end of every segment. Our consultant we have now, we like. But he's like, just leave them laughing at the end. Last thing you tag with, just do something funny. And we do. And I think people will always come up to me and goes, I just laugh with you guys. I don't know anybody who's ever come to me and go, you're very astute with your political analysis. I mean, it's really not like that. It's just three guys who really like each other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a clubhouse. You just sit down and, we're going to entertain you. And Jamie said something interesting to me a long time ago about this. He goes, I want to do a show that we would listen to. Mm-hmm. Like if we weren't doing this show, we would listen to a show like this.
Yeah.
Right.
And that always stuck with me because I thought, well, he's right. I mean, it's a show I would listen to. And every day, not every day, but about once a week, he'll go, I wouldn't turn that off. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I wouldn't either. But something will hit him in the right way, and he'll go, I wouldn't turn that off.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I can't stand to hear the show back because I don't want to hear me.
He never does.
I don't mind hearing him and David, but I don't want to hear
He's got a lot of self-hatred.
It's a bit like a lot of actors, they don't like to watch their films,
he
right?
does not ever want to hear himself back. I have to turn the monitors down in the studio in the last hour. So,
wow. What's coming near to a close, what's the biggest lesson you guys learned through this experience with the heart attack and what God's really doing with the show?
Well, I would say you put your faith in God, and you may not see it at the time, but God's always working. You're just not sure how. And putting your faith in God is better than any other alternative that I've ever known.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to go through valleys, but there's something on the other side. And I think it's your whole first book, 41, in a lot of ways. And the other thing I think for me, even politically where I started out, and this is funny, man, with David, when they paired us together when he was out, just to keep it afloat, the concern was the two of us together were way too liberal because I was more middle and David would have been further to the left. But when he was out those couple of years and we're watching news every day, we all of a sudden discovered they're lying to people. Yeah. And not only are they lying, they know they're lying. Yeah. It was like this wake-up call of, you really have to verify information. And the way it's all unfolded over time, it's like the curtain's been pulled back.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've always been just wanting to know what is the truth, whether that is with the Bible or with current events, anything else. But for the show itself, the one thing that I think we've always had together, and it's still what our talent coach would say is the secret to it, is the sense of humor. Yeah. And we're just regular, real guys, and we try to have fun with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're having fun, I think it's infectious.
And you have a lot of material.
Oh, buddy.
Oh, man. The low-hanging fruit. Yes. It's there all the time. Yeah. I 100% agree with Jamie. I mean, that's sort of what we do every day, and being I'm the only guy here that's visited the other side. I came back from the other side, but I have no memory.
Great stories.
I have no memory of the other side, which scares me as well.
Yeah.
So at any rate, no, I think the show is about truth, and it's how we see it. It's how we reflect it back. And it's also done with a sense of humor, different spin on it. And we mock only those who absolutely deserve to be mocked.
Sure.
And we will do that always.
Yeah.
Count on it.
Well, sometimes we have to apologize afterwards.
Occasionally, but not very often. We don't apologize for much. No, sometimes.
Well, I know there are people listening and watching, and perhaps they are in a season where they are desperate. I mean, I want to say I'm grateful that you guys were willing to let me share the story in the book, 9 Words from Jesus. And chapter 1 is right into your story.
Yeah.
And it's called Desperate Prayers. And there are people, desperate measures call for desperate prayers. Desperate prayers require bold faith. So I will take a time and pray for those that are watching and listening
Yeah.
and hearing your story. And my prayer is that will give them hope, that will fuel their faith.
One thing, don't give up. Keep fighting, keep pushing, keep praying. Miracles happen. I am a miracle. I am a miracle. You're listening to a miracle right now.
Yeah.
None of this should have happened to me. Every doctor I ever talked to, every therapist, everybody who specializes in different things said the same thing to me. There is no good reason, medically speaking, that you should be here. There is no good reason that you're not hooked up to a dialysis machine. No good reason. And a lot of doctors do have faith. And they'll look at you and they'll tell you, this was a God thing.
Wow. Come on.
So there you go.
Great.
There you
That's
go.
Great.
There you go. Well, that's the perfect segue to pray. Let's pray. All
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, Jesus, we just thank you so much for Scott, for Jamie. Thank you for their willingness to share the story, and thank you for the hope that it brings. Your word says in Romans 10:17 that faith comes by hearing the word of God, and I just pray that not only will hope arise in those that are listening today, but that their faith will be fueled, that they'll be willing to approach you and to cry out to you. Scott is living proof that miracles still happen, that you do answer prayer. Your word says in Romans 8:18, the suffering that we endure today cannot be compared to the glory that will be revealed in our future. So we just pray that you will move in the hearts and in the lives of everybody that's listening and watching today, that you will fuel their faith. I just pray, Lord, that we will never, ever stop calling out to you, that even when we feel like giving up, I pray, Lord, that we will stand strong, that you will surround us with the right people to hold up our arms, so we can see that breakthrough show up. We really do believe, God, that your word says, God, good things come for those who wait. Those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles, run and not be weary, walk and not faint. So we thank you in advance by faith that you are going to see us through. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, I want to find out from you guys how people can listen to the show. So firstly, I want to say thank you. I've told Jamie this a few times, but my son, who lives in LA, listens to your podcast every day and absolutely loves it. And when he was in the Peoria area, I'll be honest, he didn't listen to you guys. But I think there's a bit of home as well. He knows you guys are in Peoria, but also what you were talking about. He's like, yeah, it's just common sense. You know what I'm saying? Right. But he obviously listens through the podcast. So can you just tell us ways that people could connect with you, social media, and to listen to the show?
Yeah, go ahead.
And how many markets are you in?
130, 125, 130, I guess. I don't know.
40, something like that.
Can't remember.
Is it every state now? Pretty much?
I think so. I'm trying to think of one we're not in.
Are we in Maine? Massachusetts?
We may not be. Well, Massachusetts, yeah. Suburban Boston station.
California? You're in
California, we're in California.
Yeah, California.
A couple of places there. They love us in California.
I mean, podcasts, just wherever you get your
podcasts are
iTunes. Okay.
So it's a national radio program, but you also upload it as a podcast every day.
Yeah,
right?
every day. Well, and if it's not uploaded, don't blame me. I get the blowback on that all the time if something happens. Hey, where's the podcast? And they blame me because he has painted me out to be on the air as the guy who screws up everything. So
you look like the techie guy.
I got to tell you, he'll say, "What monkey? Did you hit a monkey button? Did you hit a monkey button?" He'll say it on the air. So I had a guy send me a picture of a monkey sitting in front of a board, and it said "Scott Monkey Button" on it. So people they're in on the joke, right?
On the air, he's a control guy. I think he'll admit this, and he wants to be behind the board. But then he'll hit a wrong button. And the thing is, if there's something that's wrong, it's not a patient sort of thing of here. It's just he just will hit random buttons, and then it's totally screwed up.
I panic.
And so this has happened a number of times. People pick up on it. Now, if the podcast isn't uploaded, or it could be a problem with Spotify, whatever, people will go after him.
They blame me,
because he runs the social media with our producer Andres. So I don't do much social media.
I'm gonna have to send Andres know. Hey man, where's the podcast? Question mark. You're not. I'm dealing with this right now. Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you guys for coming on today, sharing your story of what God did. I mean, that's it, you know, and also a friendship as well. Jamie being there every day. So we just want to thank you for sharing that today on Revival Town and coming and hanging with us.
Our pleasure.
He said so many nice things. I give him so much static all the time. Man,
He does. But he's
Well, you give me some too.
we're just brothers, you know.
dude.
Well, we need to have you guys again because we've had you both separately. This is the first time you've been on together.
Yeah.
We need to have you back on again and just have a blast. I mean,
Yeah,
we had
yeah,
a blast.
yeah.
We had a blast today.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can have you on without sharing the whole story.
Yeah, he's.
just get
You can talk about how you say I have a mental illness.
well,
say
you
it
do
all
have a
the
mental.
time.
It's a slight mental illness, but a mental illness nonetheless.
That's how it goes.
Brutal.
Oh, now we have something to look forward to for next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jamie's mental illness next time.
Thanks again, guys, for coming on.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Blind Bartimaeus sat on the outskirts of Jericho in desperate need of a miracle. When Jesus was within earshot, he cried out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Unfortunately, the crowd told him to be quiet, but undeterred, he shouted louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." This time Jesus stopped and instructed, "Bring him to me." The same crowd who told Bartimaeus to shut up now helped him up and delivered him to the Messiah. Then Jesus said 9 words that changed the trajectory of his life. The same 9 words he's saying to you right now. What do you want me to do for you? I wrote this manifesto of hope to help you thrive in the present and prevail in the future. Are you ready to shout louder?
Thank you for listening to this episode of Revival Town Podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media and remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, head on over to revivaltownpodcast.com.